There are a few changes from what I gave last March, I believe it was, but we will start with some of the latest updates on and key things that are on the DNR website. And I'll spend a good chunk of the time today talking about our enhanced lake flood elevations online site, where we've added quite a few features earlier or in the past few months here. And I'll talk about a couple of the main FEMA sites that are really useful, the Flood Map Changes Viewer and the Map Service Center. I'll spend some time on MNTOPO, just in case folks aren't aware of our DNR site, MNTOPO, and some of the features there. And I'll breeze through a few other sites here. And if we have time, I'll do some demos, and those who would like to stick around after 10:30, be happy to answer questions and demo things then, but we won't record after that. So the DNR sites, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera here, but the DNR website has been basically set up the same way for quite a while. We do have the training and education section here, and in there we've got the upcoming trainings, like the series of trainings we're giving right now. And if you scroll down, you'll see past newsletters, and you can click on those links and see the newsletters. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that training page, you can enter your email and become a subscriber to our newsletter. Another key site, if you go into our maps and technical resources and then choose Find Flood Maps, we have the latest updates and links to information about the latest updates for where our maps are. So here's a map that shows where we are right now. In the past year, we had quite a few. We had 5 of the counties that got new digital flood insurance rate maps, and we've got quite a few counties with work in progress. And so we try and keep this up, showing who's got a preliminary new map, who's got modernization going on in the county. And here I was also trying to show where the funding had gone through preliminary new maps. Also, if you, from our maps and technical resources page and that same Find Flood Maps, if you scroll down a bit, one of the links is County Datas and Map Viewers, or you can use a quick link, this quick link here, this mndnr.gov/county FP data. So on this page, well, we have a couple of links to county viewers that we know of that are really good, like Anoka and Hennepin. And a lot of the links are showing, hey, there's preliminary new maps, FEMA new maps. So we're sending you to a site that we'll be talking about a little bit later here this morning, the Flood Map Changes Viewer. So if there's preliminary maps up on that site, we have links, or if there's a pending map up, we'll send to that site. And sometimes FEMA has work maps. They have them up a lot of times for a little while. Unfortunately, they didn't take them down again after we've gotten really used to being able to use them. Here's an example of one of the nice work maps that FEMA had up for a while. Now Wanton One's got their prelims, so this work map isn't available anymore, but when they are up, they're really useful. So we want people to know that they can find those links and get to those sites. Our quick guide had been on our FTP site, but our FTP site got to be so slow and difficult to use with. But we were able to get this converted into an accessible format, and we were then allowed to put it on our website. So our quick guide is on our website. There's a link on our regulations page. And the 2020 version, we had added more about A zones and some other things in there, more about the LOMA process. So some nice resources in that guidebook. If you haven't got that guidebook, that's a good one to get downloaded, or just be aware that we now have it on our website. A couple things that we've added more recently were we did part 1 and part 2 of disaster roles for local officials related to flooding especially. And part 1 was about preparation. Part 2's about response and recovery, especially talking about the substantial damage determination responsibilities. On our preparation, response, and recovery page on the website, we have links to each of these videos. They are on YouTube, so you could search them there also. But just a hint that when you're there, underneath the video, there's a show more button. And if you click on that, it'll give some timestamps and more information. Soon, in the next month, we expect that we're going to have an updated version of our state model floodplain ordinance up on our website. And quite a few big changes in there, adding graphics, trying to make it more plain language and put it in an order that makes more sense to folks. We did get a group of local officials, some county zoning folks, helped review some of this late in 2021, and we've been in touch with our FEMA contacts at the region, reviewing here this month. So we're hoping to get the final tweaks and get that up on our website within the next month. And we do have one of these trainings scheduled to talk about the new model ordinance and highlight the changes and talk through the format and how it's going to be rolled out. That's scheduled for March 2nd. So you can register for that if you haven't already. So the first of the sites I'm going to talk about is our Lake and Flood Elevations Online, or LFEO application. We did have debate about calling it other things, but in the end, we just added the ampersand here. It had been called the Lake Flood Elevations Online because we were really focused on lakes, but we added the and because we've got a lot of other flood information on here now. For local officials, we do have this disclaimer here, reminding people local ordinances may use higher standards, that the base flood elevations, the 100-year elevations, are not the only information you need, but we know people don't pay a lot of attention to these disclaimers, but we did try. So the original site became public in March of 2020, and we had flood elevations shown on the site if they were a higher quality source. So if they were in the FEMA flood insurance study and some of the other sources where we had done some reviewing of the sources and felt they met minimum quality standards. And we're still working on getting more of the basins in with the updated data on there. And in many cases, if we've got the data, we've got the 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, 100-year, 500-year, whatever we've got for those basins, we're trying to put on the website as we enter that information. The enhancements are that we're showing all the basins, and some of them we have a little bit of DNR information like the ordinary high and stuff like that. So we've got that available now. We've added the national flood hazard layers, the flood zones, the FEMA flood zones, cross-section lines, BFE lines. We've got our unmodernized layers for those paper map counties. We added the public water layer. Our pink lines is a very popular one. We'll talk about that a little bit more here, but basically the A-zone model cross-sections. We're showing the 1% annual chance flood there. We don't have the 10 and other frequencies, but a lot of times we may, DNR staff or FEMA staff may have that data, so you can ask us about it. We've got the contours there, parcel boundaries, and we've got a couple report options, and I'm going to demo those a bit. So the main layers, or the main buttons when you come to our site, is that you've got the layer option here. You've got your backgrounds. We've got a lot of nice background options. Information's not the most up-to-date, but you can see some information on the information tab. We did add a couple measuring tools and a lat long tool, and the print options we'll talk about. And then we've got a place that we use for DNR to update the data in here. So we've got the published lakes where we've got the published information, where we've got better data. That's going to be the darker blue here. And if you click on the basin, you're going to see the 100-year or whatever frequencies we've got for that basin. We only have the 25-year for more recent studies, so in most cases that will be left blank. If you don't want it covering the basin and you want to look at the basin and the information, there's this little thing here, is a little docking thing that moves that information over and puts it on the right. And you can see more of the information at once. We've got the study date, what the source type is, the study name, and of course the datum it's in. Then if you scroll down a bit, you're going to see this lake information that we've got from DNR records, the ordinary high, the highest recorded, date of the highest recorded, and the datum. And we've got this little warning here that we did not try and put the DNR information on water levels and the ordinary high into the same datum necessarily as the flood information is. There was just not a good way to do that. So there's going to be many cases where they are in different datums because the more recent studies are in 88 datum. Most of the DNR stuff is in the 29 datum or the 1912 datum. So just be aware of that. We tried to put the datum warning on everything as to catch your eye, but we know people will miss that. So we've got other basins in addition to those where we've got the published, a lot of information showing the flood information, the flood levels on the lakes. We've got other lakes where we've got some information, or the DNR may have some information. That's in kind of a medium color blue here. And then the lakes with no listed information's in a lighter shade, and just recognizing that they're a basin and we don't have information. So if you click on one of those basins, it'll show you, for instance, in this case, the ordinary high and our highest recorded, but it doesn't show flood elevations because we haven't gone through the process of getting the best data onto this site, or we may not have better data yet. One other thing I want to point out is sometimes this will be a 1 of 2 or 2 of 2. And if you click on here and it's not showing any information, it might be because you've got to switch to 2 of 2. And it has to do with some of these basins where we've got sub-basins because of management purposes, usually for aquatic vegetation permitting and things like that. So one of the exciting things here is we've got the our pink lines, our on the A zone, the water courses where we've got supporting modeling. It wasn't to the detail and rigor where the cross sections are going to be on the official FEMA maps and the elevations won't be on the official FEMA maps, but it's gone through a pretty good review, an extensive enough review that we're comfortable saying this is our best available data. And so we are making this available. It has been available if you were a GIS person and you went to MnGeo Commons and you downloaded those data, but a lot of people don't have that technical ability. And then also this is a nice fast way to go and you can plug in an address or zoom in and find your site and see those cross sections without being a GIS savvy person or maybe taking the time to load things. And I know when I do my GIS, sometimes it can be really slow. So this has been really nice to have this more publicly available. So pointing out some of the layers, here's my layer icon here. That's showing you here that that's that estimated 1% water surface elevation. We don't call it the BFE, we call it the estimated 1% water surface elevation, which we consider our best available data. The other layer of note here that we're seeing at the same time is that we are seeing the official FEMA layers, the National Flood Hazard Layer, showing the flood hazard zones here. And if you wanted to turn it off for some reason, this little eye looking thing here, or you may not have recognized that's an eye, but it's an eye. If you click it and put a line through that, then it turns off that layer. But we want it on, so I'm going to turn it back on. The other thing I want to point out here is there's these little ellipses over here, the 3 dots. If you click on that, it gives you the option to increase the opacity or decrease it. And a lot of times it's a little too solid of coloring to really see the buildings or the vegetation and things underneath. So here's an example of decreasing that visibility a bit. So a lot of cool features in this new site. Let's see, what else did I want to show? Oh, let's say we've got a site that we're interested in right here. To do the report, you click on the little print option. And when you do that, step 1 is it's going to want you to click on a point that's going to be your point of interest on the map. So it can put this little green dot here. Then you can put in comments. If you don't put in comments, it prints with the word null there, I believe. But this is a nice way to say what your site address is. And like in this example, I indicated the base flood elevation estimate based on the upstream cross section, and I say that it was based on the upstream cross section. So once you've put the notes that you want in there, you print your map report. It does take a minute to come up. It comes up in another tab, at least on my computer. So be patient, give it a good minute, and it should come up with a report that looks like this. It'll show what you had within the area you were zoomed into or zoomed out to. And I know that sometimes I'll fiddle around with the scale that I've got, because I want to make sure, in my case, in my example here, I want to be able to show the upstream, downstream, upstream cross sections, and you'll want to be able to show the things that you're trying to show for the purposes that you're printing that map. If you press the print basin report, this is what you'll see. Is it'll show the flood study elevations and the DNR, any like the ordinary high, highest recorded. And we chose those because those are the things that we use the most often for making decisions on whether it needs a DNR permit, and for setbacks, and for figuring out lowest floors in a shoreland and those kinds of things. You're looking at ordinary high or highest recorded, highest known elevations. And again, our check vertical datum, they may be in a different datum. So hopefully it's still keeping up with me here. Looks like it is. So the next steps are, we do hope to continue getting more of our basin data into the system. And we're also trying to see what are the other options for maybe being able to do point and click and get elevation, specific point elevations and profiles, like we'll show you can do in MNTOPO, and more interactive water level graphs. Like in Lake Finder, they just have a static tenure graph, and we're looking at trying to work cooperatively with the folks that populate Lake Finder, because if you look at the full record, it's a much longer record, and a lot of times people want to focus, say, hey, I want just this time period, and zoom into a certain time period. So we're hoping that will get added in the future, but we're very excited about what we've added so far. And I've got things open on my other screen so I can see things are progressing, so that's a good sign. The FEMA site that I wanted to highlight here first is a site called the Flood Map Changes Viewer. And that's a site that if when you come in here initially, if you see red, that means it's a DFIRM county. It's a digital firm county. If it's got this pinkish color, there are preliminary new maps that are there. Sometimes those preliminary new maps came out several years ago. Sometimes they're brand new. They try and get them posted on this site very soon after the preliminary new maps come out. This is actually an old shot because I wanted to show a pending county. So Yellow Medicine and Cottonwood had pending maps that went effective back in September and October, but in the 6 months before they became effective, or at least a few months before they became effective, they had this lighter blue color, meaning that the pending map information was on this site. And when you go to a county where it's currently a paper county, you see all these annoying dots here. And to get rid of those, go to your layers and expand the national flood hazard, or actually you want to turn off the effective firm map panels layer. And the other thing I like to do is expand the national flood hazard layer and turn on LOMAs, because a lot of times you want to see where the LOMAs are in your area. And when you do that, the dots go away, and these little purple dots showing where past letters of map amendments are show up. This is a sample pending view. So it says it's pending section or zone AE. It shows the pending floodway in this example. So talking about those letters of map amendments, sometimes we want to see more information about them. This is nice that it shows you where they're located. Newer ones, the dot will be very close to the building or right on the building. Older ones, it might not be so exact, but it might be in the general neighborhood. Do a click. It used to be that you could click on your LOMA and you get this little box here and click again. And you'd be able to download the letter here, but FEMA stopped having information available this way in the last year. Click one more time. So you can't, that part's not working anymore. When we talk about the FEMA's Map Service Center site, we'll talk about an option to see that. Now you're seeing that no information available. So keep going. So mentioning the FEMA Map Service Center site, that's the other main site wanted to talk about. Go ahead and click through. You enter your address, that red box there, and you'll see that map that with an aerial photo background. You can toggle to the roads if you want, and you can click around in there and move where that location drop is. And so here's an example where we've zoomed in a bit. We put the location drop right on the house. And now we want to print that map. We want to print a format. And that orangey box is around the dynamic map, the little magnifying glass. If you click on that link, it will print a format. And the format can be, you can either print it out or save it as a PDF. It will only print at the same scale as the original firm. So even if you're zoomed in, it's only going to print it at one scale, the scale of the original map here in the FEMA Map Service Center site, and you can't change what layers are shown. But it is a nice official copy of the map that you can be using to show lenders or just to know where the building is within the FEMA floodplain there. Next one. On this site that we mentioned earlier, click. We do have at the top of this site, we talk about a video, and in that video we show how to use this site, how to make a format, both for the DFIRM counties. Click one more time, and again. And we do have a timestamp. If you click on that, show more. So we have a section where we talk about the digital flood insurance rate map, and we have a section about doing paper maps, but FEMA went and changed the look of their site at the MSC for doing paper maps. So we're in the process of doing an updated segment on how to do the paper maps. Keep going. One of the nice things here is that it shows letters of map revisions right away on the site. So here's an example where the new maps came out in 2017. It showed that whole area as floodplain. But when a few months later, when the letter of map revision came out, they showed that on the FEMA site. And you can go ahead and do a couple clicks there. Show a ball field, an example of a building there, and how you can see in the original maps, they were in the floodplain, and in the updated letter of map revision modified area, it does show it right away on the FEMA site. With the paper maps, there's not a good way of knowing that there's been a letter of map revision done in the area. So one of the nice things on this site that got updated. We'll keep going. So the other thing that we want to point out is above the pictures that it will show, go ahead and click again. It'll show if there's been any letters of map revisions in that top folder. If there's a number there, that means that there's been a letter of map revision. Click again. The other thing, again, the other thing of interest is revalidations. If you've gotten new maps, the mayor or the county board chair will have gotten a letter listing out letters of map amendments, letters of map revisions based on fill that were automatically revalidated. Click again and again. If you click on there, you'll get a copy of that letter. And again, it's addressed to the mayor or the county board chair, whoever the chief elected official is. And it will have attached to it a list of the LOMAs that are still valid, even with the map update that was done. Yeah, and just in case you've lost the copy that was mailed to you. There is a link to the National Flood Hazard Layer Viewer from this site if you've got a digital firm, but it's actually that layer is in that FEMA Flood Map Changes viewer that we were just showing. So this is not as useful as a site as it used to be, but just to know that that link is there. Next slide, one more. There's also a Show All Products link. And if you use this, you can get a copy of the flood insurance study, see historical or pending products, you can get the shape files, those kinds of things. So if you click that, you'll see search results for whatever area you were looking at. And you can expand that and see effective products in different folders. You can expand those folders or download all of the things in those folders. And those that aren't grayed out are available. So in this example, you've got the effective products and you've got some historic products if you were to click on those folders. Next slide. We mentioned earlier in the Flood Map Changes viewer, you used to be able to just click there and see the LOMAs, the copy of the letter map amendment. But if you go to the Search All Products, in that product ID in the upper right, put your case number, click that blue search. Keep going. And then you'll see whichever folder is not grayed out, you'll expand that. Keep going. It's kind of showing how you step through. It'll show a letter map change, and then you can download it. And you'll get the copy of the determination document for that letter of map amendment, which you used to be able to get on the other site. So it's kind of a pain, but you can still get those. Or if you know the case number and you just want to get a copy of that case number. Okay, next slide. So for the paper map counties, you can still click that get the map above. Next slide. oh, this is mentioning that you can toggle to Street View, but then the other, keep going in the slide, that the link's the same, but the steps have changed, and I mentioned we are in the process of creating a new video on how to do the paper county formats and viewing those. That should be out pretty soon. So let's see on our website, again, what are we showing here? So the next site I wanted to mention is MNTOPO. That's been around for, close since like 2013. And it's a really useful site. It was set up when we had our after we had statewide LiDAR, and we wanted to make this available. This is actually the only place you can get this LiDAR information. It's, oops. And for some things, you need to be zoomed in to see certain layers. Let's keep going here. So if you go to this page, it'll tell you about MNTOPO. You click the proceed to the viewer. Keep going here. On the viewer in the upper left, you can see how to enter the address. The options that were in the upper right, the icons, one's printing a map. You can see choosing the base maps. We don't have a lot of base maps options because they were originally doing this for use in the field and wanted to not have it bogged down with too many options, but you've got a nice imagery option. You've got some terrain options. There is a PDF help document. Next slide. So one of the key things that people don't always realize is here is there's that layer option. You can turn on and off the contour layers. The 2-foot does come up as your default, but if it's too busy for you, you want to turn off the 2 feet and just keep the 10-foot or 50-foot, you can do that. The middle option, if you click there, it has the LiDAR flight lines, and when you click on the flight lines, it will tell you the date that those were collected, the LiDAR was collected. And the one we're going to be demoing here is the flood data. If you turn on the flood data layer, you can see some things we're going to show in a couple more slides here. Go ahead. So here, this is showing the unmodernized example, because we break the layers into unmodernized and modernized. Sometimes it comes up really opaque, and there is that transparency bar. And if you click again, it should be more transparent. Yeah, they're showing that it's more transparent. I've moved the bar over. And then those that are that more yellow color are the paper map counties where we had this Q3, this old data layer. It was a quick and dirty digitization that was done with funding for the counties that got flooded in 1993. So we don't have them for all the paper map counties, but for many of them. Next slide. The modernized examples are this pinkish color. So that is just the 100-year layer. We don't have the floodway or the 500 shown here, but we do have the 100-year. And in this case, this is the official boundary because the digital versions are the official boundaries for the DFIRM, the digital flood insurance rate map counties. So moving on, another one of those icons in the upper right, you'll see it's a graph looking icon. If you click on that, you're going to see that box that shows the point elevation line and freehand line. If you click on the point elevation option, it's going to give you the elevation and the lat long information for that point. If you click on the line, it's going to give you a profile. And we'll have an example here. Go ahead and click. So here's an example where I clicked on the corner of a building and it shows for that point that I clicked on, here's what the elevation is in feet and meters, and here's the lat long information. You can't look at more than one point at once, but you can kind of click around and get a feel for things. And we mentioned in the LOMA discussions that how to do LOMAs, that a lot of times people will kind of click around a building to see if it shows they're above the flood elevation and if they might be eligible to get a letter of map amendment because the ground next to the building is above the flood elevation. Next one. Here's an example using that line option, that middle option. I clicked in the lake and then I clicked up on the land and it draws a profile on the fly. So this is a really useful thing for looking at bluffs. And Dan Petrick with our Shoreland Rivers program has done a lot of nice work on instructions on how to download. There's a way to download those points and be able to load them into your own graph. I use it also if I'm looking at what's the water levels at road crossings and things like that. So it can be really helpful for doing some quick determinations of those steep slopes, bluffs, looking at low points on roads and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Next slide. So we'll talk about just a few other sites fairly quickly, and then we'll see what questions there might be and maybe demo some things. So we do have the hydraulic model download application on the DNR site. And why don't you go to the next page? So if you go to that page, there's a link that says launch application. You click on that launch application to get to the site. And at the bottom here, we've got a link to show the map where things are available. I don't know if that's the most up to date, but it should at least give you an idea of, go ahead back to the map. But that map shows where there are models and actually also gives you an idea of how good the topo was for those models in this color-coded map here. The maps with LiDAR, those blue ones, are usually the best quality, and those that were done with quads are not so great. Keep going. So when you get to the mapper, you can zoom in, but you'll see that some of the streams have a bolder blue. That indicates that there is a model available. And in the gray reaches, there may be a model. You'll have to reach out to DNR staff and ask if we have a model. We put an emphasis on getting the A-zone models, the HEC-RAS newer models onto this site. And we're working on the backlog of detailed models and models from letters of map revisions. Okay, next slide. There's different ways to zoom around and navigate there. On the right side, when you're looking at the map, it's got that search option. There is an FAQ PDF there and some disclaimers. But usually you're going to be zooming in and out with the plus minus or with scrolling with your mouse there. Although the search, you can put in an address or put in coordinates, and that search is pretty nice. Next slide. When you zoom in and you click on the stream, it's going to bring up the name of the stream and a little box showing the date, the type of model used, and the model date. If you click on that box, then you're going to see that information that's on the right, showing who did the modeling, what was the topo source, was it LiDAR, was it, in this case, it's showing it was USGS topo, so not as great of a topo source, and then what kind of model it was. And I know engineers, when you see the HEC2 or people that deal with models, you see the HEC2 and you groan. But the more recent models that are HEC-RAS models, we're happier to see when that's what the model source is. But you can then, on the download, it's got the little drop symbol there. If you click on that, you can download the model right at that site. So a lot of our models are available. You don't have to contact DNR staff to get them. You can work on a weekend if you like. But again, if it's a grade outstream, you can check with DNR, see if we've got the data. We may not, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're plugging away on getting information in there. It does seem to work better in more modern browsers. So basically Internet Explorer, when we were first rolling this out, people were trying to use it there and it doesn't work. So apparently they don't like us to say use Firefox or Chrome or modern. They like us to say modern search engines instead of picking on Internet Explorer. Go ahead. Another couple quick slides here in case you don't know that DNR's got this nice National Wetland Inventory Wetland Finder site. And you can zoom in and it shows the wetland types in a couple different formats there on the right, if you look at that. Also, let's see, if you zoom in, we'll do one more slide there, Matt. It does show the public waters with that crosshatch. We actually use the same symbology if you turn on the public water layer in our LFEO site, our lake and flood elevations viewer. It does show those there. And if you click on, there's some information where we've got links then to who the Wetland Conservation Act contacts are. And if it's a public water, we've got links to the area hydrologist list. There are some other links to contacts that wanted people to be aware of on our site. We have a county level site where we show links. It needs updating. I'm working on getting that updated, hopefully in the near future. But a couple other sites for watershed contacts and figuring out what watershed you're in within the metro area, which were a couple helpful sites that I wanted to share. And I think we're getting near the end here. Oh, our climate change site. We do have this climate change in Minnesota site on the DNR page. And if you go into there, there's a lot of useful information. And I've got just a couple slides showing some examples of the kinds of things you can do there. Next slide. So here you can either pick the whole state or a particular watershed or adjoining watersheds, and you can look at temperature trends or precip trends. So here's just showing a couple examples of things that you can do. Go in and take a look at things for an area that you're interested in. And then next page. This is a graph that basically used data from that site that we were showing a year or two ago here on how wet 2019 was. And it's our 7-year average is probably still up there, but you can use data to make a graph like this. Next page. So that was the things that we were hoping to cover here.